Welcome to the weekly MindSweep number 201. Manage your mind, shame, the shame flood. Why explaining your work feels like defending your worth. A few months ago, I was at a networking event for local businesses. You know the kind with the fancy name tags, the high top tables, and the white linen tablecloths. There's polite conversation that feels like small talk wearing a blazer. I introduced myself the way I always do. I'm a brain-based strategist helping creative and neurodivergent entrepreneurs build businesses aligned with their wiring. The person across from me nodded, smiled, and then tilted their head. So is that like coaching or consulting or something else? The pause between their words and my response lasted 1 second. But that 1 second was enough for my entire nervous system to fall through the floor. My chest tightened, my breath thinned, my thoughts scattered like loose papers in a gust of wind. That familiar heat rose up from my neck, a shame flood. It was a sudden realization that I wasn't in casual conversation anymore. I was in the silent battle to justify my work, my value, and my right to be there. Before I knew it, I was over-explaining, defending, adding layers of detail no one had even asked me for, offering frameworks, methods, and neuroscience examples, not because they needed proof, but because my brain was convinced I did. When they didn't immediately get what I do, my nervous system didn't interpret it as curiosity. It interpreted it as a threat. And at that moment, I wasn't answering a question. I was trying to protect my legitimacy. Shame hits fast because it lives in the survival circuits of the brain, not the logical ones. Here's what's happening under the surface, especially for ADHD and creative entrepreneurs. The amygdala sounds the alarm. This peanut-sized part of the brain detects anything that feels like disapproval, confusion, or misunderstanding and flags it as danger. I'm not talking about emotional threat. I'm talking about survival danger. The head tilt wasn't a threat, but my brain registered it as one. The brain feels an identity threat. When your brain is tied to who you are, and for creative entrepreneurs, it always is, questions about your work feels like questions about your worth. This activates the brain's default wiring for perfectionism, overexplanation, self-doubt, rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria, and people-pleasing. The prefrontal cortex goes offline. You lose access to clarity, language, perspective, emotional regulation, and the ability to pause. This is why you can feel deeply competent one moment and suddenly unable to form a sentence the next. The fight, flight, fawn response takes over. And for many ADHD creatives, the response is often fawn or fight. Fawn, let me prove, justify, or over-explain so you'll see why I belong. Or fight, which tends to be inward. Why can't I just explain myself better? Why am I like this? Your brain isn't malfunctioning here. It's overprotecting the parts of you tied to your creativity and identity. Creativity and confidence shut down. Your brain shifts from innovation mode to protection mode, blocking the exact brilliance you'd normally use to articulate your work with ease. This isn't character, this is chemistry. You're not broken. You're wired for meaning, visibility, and connection. If you take nothing else from the neuroscience, let it be this. There is nothing wrong with you. Your brain is doing exactly what it is designed to do. The shame flood feels so overwhelming, not because you're fragile, inconsistent, or overly sensitive, but because you care deeply. Your creativity is tied to your identity. Your work is personal. Your brain is wired to scan for belonging. ADHD makes emotional experiences more intense and immediate. Being misunderstood has been a lifelong pattern, so your brain reads it as familiar danger. Of course, your thoughts race. Of course, your nervous system reacts quickly. Of course, the urge to justify yourself floods your body before your logic has time to weigh in. You are not traumatic. You are not overreacting. You are not too much. You are a creative entrepreneur whose work comes from the inside out. And when your work gets questioned, confused, or misunderstood, it makes sense that your brain responds as if you're being questioned, confused, or misunderstood. Because for creatives, this work is you. And for neurodivergent entrepreneurs, that connection is even stronger. Your ideas, intuition, vision, and lived experience are woven directly into your offers and your impact. So when a moment like that networking head tilt happens, your brain isn't telling you that you're inadequate. It's telling you, this matters. I want to be understood. I want to belong. Please protect the parts of me I made visible. That is human. That is normal. That is not character deficiency. This is your brain's natural response to a perceived threat and wiring for connection and belonging. There's another layer of this that nearly every creative entrepreneur knows intimately. The moment you start adding more and more value to justify your price. It's subtle and fast. You send a proposal, then immediately add a bonus. You offer a package, then pad it with extra sessions or deliverables. You lower the investment before anyone asks. You rewrite the description to make it more clear because you're afraid they won't see the value. Not because the client needs more, but because you don't feel like enough. This is the same shame flood that's expressed in business decisions. Price low for safety, over-deliver to compensate, burnout from doing too much, feel resentment or doubt, shame yourself for the resentment, repeat. ADHD intensifies this cycle. We feel emotion fast and fully. We anticipate rejection before it happens. We assume another's need that they need more proof than they actually do. We chronically underestimate our own value. Pricing feels like personal worth, not a neutral container. Underpricing is not a money problem. It's a shame problem. Over-delivering is not generosity. It's a nervous system coping strategy. You do not need to shrink your price to be valuable. You do not need to build a 10-layer offer to be respected. You do not need to defend your work to make it digestible. You need a pause, you need awareness, and you need a strategy that honors your wiring. That's where we're going to go next. If shame flooding is fast, your strategy needs to be simple, accessible, and somatically grounding. Here's how you move through that moment without spiraling. Step 1, awareness. Name what is happening. The moment you feel the heat rising, the breath tightening, or the rush of over-explanation, pause internally and name it. Ah, I'm shame flooding. This feels like a threat, but it's not danger. My brain thinks I need to prove myself. Naming it moves the experience out of the amygdala and into conscious awareness. This is your first lifeline. Step 2, the power of the pause. Slow your response by one breath. You don't need a long pause, you just need a beat. Before answering, take a small breath through your nose and soften your shoulder by 2%. This micropause interrupts the automatic fight-fawn cycle. It re-engages your prefrontal cortex, and it gives your nervous system a microdose of safety. It resets your brain just enough to choose a grounded response instead of a defensive one. It's also okay for you to take all of the time you need to reset. Step 3, curiosity over proving. When someone asks a question about your work, shift out of performance and into conversation. Oh, that's a great question. What part are you most curious about? Or, it overlaps with coaching and consulting, but tell me more what you're trying to understand. This moves the moment out of shame and into connection. Now you're not defending your work, you're guiding the narrative. Step 4, anchor back to your value. After the conversation, return to this grounding truth. My work is legitimate because it transforms people, not because everyone instantly understands it. Originality is often misinterpreted before it's valued. Your work isn't to be immediately understood. Your work is to make an impact. Your value is not dictated by someone else. That networking moment wasn't about someone questioning my work. It was about my brain misreading curiosity as a threat, because that's what shame does. It rushes in to protect the parts of ourselves that feel exposed. It convinces us we need to perform, prove, or over-explain to belong. It mistakes not being immediately understood as not being enough. I'm here to remind you of the facts. Your work is not less legitimate because it needs context. Your worth is not something to defend, it's something to inhabit. And your value is not dictated by someone else's comprehension speed. When you notice the shame flood, pause and choose curiosity over proving. Everything will shift. Your voice, clarity, and confidence return. And what remains is not the panic of needing to justify yourself, but the grounded knowing that your work matters. Because it does. I have two questions for you this week, and I would love for you to reply and share with me your experience. When was the last time you felt the urge to over-explain your work or your worth? And what stories does your brain tell you during a shame flood? Ready to work with me? The over-explaining, the proving, the tightening in your chest when someone doesn't get your work, I want you to know that you don't have to untangle that alone. A MindSweep mapping session gives you a safe space to understand the emotional loops, the protective patterns, and the meaning making your brain runs in the background. Together, we'll map how your mind processes information, rejection, visibility, and worth, and translate that into clarity, language, and a strategy you can actually use in your business. Your work doesn't need more justification. Your brain needs more understanding. Your brain, your business, mapped. You can visit my website, chickbookcreative.com, to book a free MindSweep chat to learn more about the process. Or if you're ready to get to work on your mind and your business, you can book a free consultation there.